Joining now. Hi, my name is Matt Kendall. I'm an IEMT therapist and an approved trainer. Now, when you're working in therapy, one of the things which you're going to get over and over is fears and phobias. Now, a fear and a phobia can be, there's a whole list of fears and phobias. There's literally like a whole list of them. And every year they seem to be bringing out a new name for a crazy phobia that's, that's very, very particular. So what I want to do today is I want to explain a little bit about fears and phobias. I want to explain about my experience working with people with fears and phobias. And I want to explain a little bit about, sorry, just making a note as well, a little bit about who I've worked with, and the way that I work with people as well. So I am going to be referencing some IEMT terms today. You don't need to be an IEMT practitioner to understand what I'm going to be speaking about. But if you are obviously an IEMT practitioner, this will make more sense to you. And if you want to become an IEMT practitioner, get in contact, because that's what I do all day, every day. So I just want to read you the definition of what a fear and phobia is. So I went online and found this definition in dictionary.com, I believe. A phobia is a type of anxiety disorder defined by persistent and excessive fear of an object or a situation. The phobia typically results in a rapid onset of fear and is present for more than 6 months. So that is what the dictionary definition of a fear and phobia is. Now, what I have found in my experience dealing with fears and phobias, now I've dealt with everything from fears of small objects, buttons and coins is quite common. Clowns people have. Heights is obviously a big one. Swimming and being out of their depth is quite a big one as well. Stage fright, I suppose, is a fear or a phobia. It's basically they class as a fear of being judged. So I've actually done a lot of different fears and phobias. Fears of elevators, or lifts as you call them. So there's lots and lots of things that kind of contribute towards this. So if you just work with somebody and they go, I have a fear of heights. Well, what is the common way of dealing with this? Well, you've got to understand why the fear and phobia is there, how it got set, what it's doing at the moment, the future of it. So I like to elicit a timeline of this, any specific memories that have happened throughout, any specific things coming up in the future where this would be a problem, how they feel about the phobia, how they feel about having the phobia, how they feel about the identity of the phobia, and how they feel about the identity of the person having the phobia, and what this phobia actually is. So there's a lot to unpack there. I'm going to go through each in individual parts here. So when I'm dealing with people, if they say they have a particular fear or phobia, that is when I'm going to start to investigate what this actually is. And the way that I investigate this, I'm actually looking for the patterns of chronicity. Now, the patterns of chronicity, I will go through them individually in different videos, but this is an IEMT way of working with people. How have they had a problem for so long, basically? Why have they stayed chronic long-term condition? Why have they had this problem for such a long time? Now, when I first started learning about fears and phobias, I got taught it was all about feelings. And the best thing, if somebody has a negative feeling, is to put a big, powerful, positive feeling on top of that. And it makes perfect sense. And when I was younger, I thought this was brilliant. And I did have some success. So say that you have somebody who has a fear of heights and they want to go up to a tower or something. They need to go up high. You can make them feel powerful and super and big happy feelings and colors. You can do that. And in your office, they will say, oh, it feels great. Can they do it? Chances are they can't actually do the thing. Because you have to understand how a fear and phobia is currently impacting somebody's life. And this is what we seem to forget. We just seem to think somebody has a fear and phobia, but we don't look about how it's actually impacting their life. And just having big happy feelings on top of something, it's still there, but what happens is festering and it can crack open. So say that you have somebody with a fear of heights, you make them feel super happy and confident and brave. When they start to get up in a height situation, chances are those old feelings, identities and problems are going to resurface, and that might result in somebody having a panic attack or a freak out. I have personally found when dealing with a fear and phobia, the best thing to do is to create a reaction where they are just indifferent to the stimulus and the situation. So just indifferent. So basically, rather than thinking, yeah, I can do that, you just make it okay. No big happy feelings, no chanting, just a feeling of, it's all right. So I believe that is the best kind of outcome to go for. Rather than big happy feelings, feelings of, it's okay, I can do this if I have to. Not that I sort of want to do this, but it's okay, I can do this should I want to. So I always start off with this question, what's the problem? Not what would you like, but what's the problem? IEMT is a very much around, it makes other stuff work better, as Andy Austin said recently. It can be a solution in itself. It also helps other stuff work much, much better. So they might be taking, they might be having stuff to deal with their phobia. They might be going to a spider class or whatever it might be. Or they might have just come to you directly. But what you want to do is you want to establish what the problem really is. So if somebody comes to you, okay, I have a fear of heights, okay? So what's the problem? And they'll often look confused because they think they've told you the problem. They haven't told you the problem. They've given you a label of sorts. And they'll be like, I've told you I've got a fear of heights. Okay. So what's the problem? And they will then have to start to think about the actual structure and the reasoning of this problem, rather than just this label which they've been using often for years. So what's the problem? So you have a fear of heights, so what's the problem? Well, it limits what I can do, okay? Tell me about that. Well, I can't go up the Eiffel Tower. Do you want to? No. So what's the problem? Well, people always want to make me go up somewhere high. Ah. So you have a fear of heights, and what you don't like is people trying to make you do things that you don't want to do. Suddenly, with just that bit of information, we've actually got a lot more to work with. Does that make sense? So as soon as we start to unpack this problem a little more, we've actually got much more to work with. I always like to think about what's the problem behind the problem. What's the structure? I also like to ask these questions, and feel free to use these questions, but these are the kind of questions which I ask. Now, when I'm asking these questions, what I'm looking to do, I'm looking for identities of people, of themselves and other people. I'm looking for thought, I'm looking for feelings, I'm looking for the patterns of chronicity, and I'm looking for specific memories, okay? This is a good part. What's the worst part of this problem? What's the worst part of this phobia? So say you've got a fear of heights. What is the worst part of this? Okay? I worked with a woman who had a fear of dogs recently. And I said to her, so you have a fear of dogs? Yeah. What's the worst part about this? And she said, not being able to get away. It's not seeing the dog, it's knowing the dog can run faster than her and she's not able to get away. So when you're not able to get away from this problem, how strong is this feeling? How familiar? And when's the first time you can remember feeling this way? Now, when did this problem start? Now, some people will have very definite and clear memories of how particular things start. They will have an incident where the problem started. Now, when somebody has an incident where the problem started, these tend to be the easier things to work with because it's a specific memory. Somebody who I know can't eat lamb. The smell of cooking lamb and lamb makes him feel ill. When he was doing technology in whatever it was, welding at school, and this is like 30 odd years ago, a piece of metal, hot metal, fell inside his shoe and burnt his skin, and he couldn't get the shoe off. And that smell reminds him of lamb, cooking lamb. That's what he said burning flesh smelled like to him. So are there significant memories around this phobia? Now, often, and this tends to be more with women, what I found in general, we will inherit our fears and phobias from our parents. We will actually inherit them from our parents. Things like fear of the dark, fear of mice, which is a big one, all tend to come from parents. So you will often have a fear or a phobia where the client has never experienced the stimuli directly. All they've had is anecdotal tales from their mother or their father or a sibling, because kids are cruel, especially growing up, but they've not experienced it themselves. When this happens, there are different ways you can work with this. Sometimes you can actually witness the thing happening. So a mouse may have got in the house, you may have seen your mother react in a certain way. So it's not the first time they can remember feeling this way, it's the first time they can remember somebody else feeling this way and seeing that reaction. And also there'll be identities at play here, mother and me. When I saw my mother, it really affected me. So I'm listening to the language in which they use, because basically I'm going to start taking apart their language structure of how they're having this problem. So somebody might come to see you and go, I've got a real fear of mice. But what's the problem? I hate them. They make my skin crawl. They just make me really anxious. So what's the problem? Well, what if a mouse gets in my house? So what would be the worst part of that? Knowing that there's somebody or something in my house that I don't want. Okay. Make a little note there, going to work on this. So where do you believe this problem comes from? Well, my mother always hated mice. So your mother always hated mice. What was that like? She always told me that mice carried disease. So your mother told you that mice always carried disease. And what was that like? It really scared me and it made me feel dirty. Right. So I'm starting to write this out. I'm starting to write these things down about the identities and the feelings, because I'm going to be working on all of these. So I'm looking for significant memories, feelings, emotions, and experiences. I also want to do this. How do they feel about having the phobia? So, for example, when it comes to a fear of heights, what's it like having this fear of heights? What's the experience of it? And what's it like thinking about having this fear of heights? Because these are two different experiences. So having this fear of heights can be annoying, life-limiting, frustrating. And what's it like thinking about having a fear of heights? I find it quite embarrassing. I find it quite childish. Excellent. The more that I understand what they think about it, the more I have to work with by putting it through the IEMT algorithms. I hope this makes sense. I want to know how it affects them now. So by having this fear of heights or this fear of mice or whatever it might be, how does it affect you now? Well, I can't be left alone. I have to have somebody in the house with me. Okay. Or with a fear of heights, how does that affect you? Well, it limits where I can go and what I can do and where I can live. I worked with a woman who was in a lift during 9/11 and then during the London bombs. She was waiting for the third incident. Imagine living like that. So by having this problem now, what is it like? How does it impact your life now? So by having this fear of heights, what's it like? How does it affect you now? Well, it limits what I can do. Well, what is it that you want to do? Well, I really want to go onto the top of the shard. When you think about going to the top of the shard, what's it like? I feel frightened and threatened. This feeling of frightened and threatened, how strong is this feeling? How familiar? And when's the first time you can remember feeling this way? And then I start to break it down using the complex pattern. So how's it going to affect their future? By having this problem now, how's this going to affect your future? Again, I'm looking for thoughts, feelings, emotions, which then I can start to regress using the complex pattern to where these thoughts, feelings, and emotions originated from, so I can integrate them. I'm also looking for identities. So by not being able to go up to do heights, by not being able to go up heights and thinking about your future, what's that like? It makes me feel like a wimp. Okay? It makes me feel like a wimp. So we have these different identities, and we have this identity of me, and me tends to be a receptacle. So when you have this identity of me, thinking about your future and being a wimp, where is me located? How old is me? What's happening around me? Hold it right there. And then I would start to do identity stuff around the identities which they are giving me in relation to the problem of the past, present, and the future. I'm always going back to the imprints, obviously, but I'm looking about how somebody structures their phobia basically across time and across their life. Because if somebody has a fear of heights, it's not just usually being up high that's the problem. It's usually being vulnerable or being out of control. I'll say that again. The fear and phobia tends to be a representative of more things that are going on. It's not just usually to do with one thing. It's about how they experience life in different ways, going across time and across different areas of their life as well. So if by the traditional way of dealing with fears and phobias, and you can do this by doing the fast phobia cure and all this kind of stuff, what that might do is that might deal with one specific thing. When I deal with a fear and phobia using IEMT, I'm looking to create a more generalized change which goes broader across that person's life. By what identities are at play? Now the thing is, what patterns are they exhibiting? Are they looking for the problem that's remaining? Are they at cause or effect? Are they letting this phobia dominate them? What have they done already to take control of this? And why hasn't this worked? If this has worked for other people, why hasn't it worked for them? And I will often say this. People go, you know, I've got this fear of heights. I've tried everything. I tried to go up on this step, but just nothing works for me. So nothing works for you. So what's wrong with you? I'm just different. I'm just odd. You know this feeling of being odd or different? How strong is this feeling? How familiar? And when's the first time? So again, I'm using the patterns to tease out the emotions and the experiences. Why do you want to overcome this fear or phobia? Why do you want to do it? Now, the thing is, what's weird about having a fear or phobia, although people think it's limiting to have a fear or phobia, it's also allowing them to feel a certain way. So, for example, if somebody has a fear of mice, okay, somebody has a fear of mice, by having this fear of mice, what does it allow you to think, feel, believe, or avoid? So by having this fear of mice, they don't want to be left alone at home. So by having people around you at home, what does that allow you to feel? It allows me to feel safe and protected. Okay. If you're feeling safe and protected, what's that allowing you to avoid feeling? Abused, vulnerable. How strong is this feeling of being abused or vulnerable? When's the first time? See, what we tend to have is we tend to latch on all these feelings to a particular thing. And again, it's a representative of a lot of other structures that are happening underneath. So when somebody has a fear or phobia of a mouse, it's because they don't want to be left alone. Now, they don't want to be left alone because it could be, and this actually genuinely happened, is that when I was working with this woman, she was actually abused by her stepfather. And when she was abused by her stepfather, she saw a mouse. So what she represents the mouse as being abused, as being that feeling. Now, it doesn't need to be as dramatic as this by any means. And then, so the mouse can then trigger all these things. The problem was with her stepfather and all of those problems, not the actual thing itself. But we use the mouse, the phobia, to get into these underlying structures by using the patterns of chronicity, by using the algorithms with IEMT. Another example is a guy who I worked with who did have a fear of heights. Now, he is a property developer, and going up heights is part of his job. One day, he was checking out a building, and there was a freak gust of wind, and it really shook him. It really shook him, and he felt so weak. He was shaken, physically shaken. But the worst thing is that the people who he was with saw this. So now I said to him, what's the problem? Well, I have a fear of heights. Okay. So what's the problem? Well, I can't go up onto buildings, and I need to do for my business. So what's the worst part about this? Well, it's limiting what I can do. Okay. So when you were on this building and this wind blew, what was it like? Well, everybody saw. So everybody saw. What was that like? I looked weak. So you looked weak. How familiar is this feeling of looking weak? How strong is it, and when's the first time? And that went back to family issues to do with his dad and his brothers. And basically, he was the smallest, not the youngest, but the smallest of four. And he was bullied by other people, by his brothers and his dad, for being the smallest and the weakest. This, because it wasn't dealt with properly when he was younger, now, because he had this gust of wind, he's now developed this fear of going up high into buildings. But what he's really avoiding is looking weak in front of other people. Now, I could have had feelings where you feel strong and super up a building, and the higher you go, the better you feel. Or we can deal with the identity of his dad, his brothers, himself, and the imprint memories. So basically, he doesn't care. So when you think about going up a building now, what's it like? It's part of my job. And that's what we got to. It's just what I need to do. I don't particularly like it. It's just something which I do. Let me give you a few more examples and a few more questions that I ask, and then I'll be taking on questions. So what have they already tried? And again, by having this fear and phobia, what does it allow you to not do in life? So I get this all the time. I have a stage fright, or I have a fear of interviews or commitment. This is a big one. I have a phobia of commitment. Okay, well, tell me about that. Well, you know, I don't want to be trapped. I don't want to be sort of trapped down. So you have a fear of commitment. Okay. So what's that like? Well, it's about being trapped and unhappy. When's the first time you can remember feeling this way? Oh, I don't. When's the first time you can remember somebody else feeling this way? It was my dad or my friend's dad. He was unhappy in his relationship, and I don't want that for myself. So we say we have this fear of commitment, but it's because what we've experienced growing up as a child and what we've witnessed. So it's not actually happened to us, it's what we've witnessed. So I would then work around the feeling of, obviously, the feeling of being trapped as well, but that feeling of seeing somebody trapped in a relationship which they were unhappy in, so you can work on that. So when you think about being with your girlfriend now long term, what's it like? Well, it could be great. Exactly. When you start to move the crap away from stuff, people can see what's actually there. IEMT is really good at clearing stuff away so you can deal with the information that's presented in front of you rather than your association to things of the past. Okay, I hope this makes sense. I will open it for questions. Hi Helen, how are you doing? Last thing, so yeah, so basically by having this fear and phobia, what does it allow you to avoid doing? And growing up is a big one. So getting into a relationship, I have a fear of being married. Why? Trapped, having to grow up, lack of freedom, all of these things which you can then start to pull apart and work with identity and emotion. And also, it's often because people want to feel safe. By having this fear and phobia, it at least keeps them safe. So fear of flying, very, very common. So by having this fear of flying, what does it allow you to think, feel, or believe? Well, it keeps me safe. Okay, because what does it allow you to avoid doing? It allows me to be on a plane where I don't have control. So when you don't have control, how strong is that feeling? 9. When's the first time you can remember feeling this way? When I was in the back seat of my dad's car when we crashed. It will often, the phobia and the stimulus are often not connected through context, but through emotion. Okay? I hope this has made some sort of sense. I've gone on for a lot longer than I intended to, so we've gone on for half an hour now. So again, just to sort of summarize, just to wrap things up, a fear and a phobia, the thing which they're coming to tell you to work on is usually a representative of an underlying structure that goes across time and through different areas of their life. It's their way of being. By using the questions and the patterns in IEMT, you can elicit these deeper structures of emotion and identity and how they're using these patterns of chronicity to stay stuck. By using the right questions, you can get the relevant emotions and experiences to then use the simple pattern for one-off memories, or the complex pattern for emotional imprints, or the identity patterns about their own identities and the identities of other people. I'm going to stay around for 10 minutes. If you have any questions, please do let me know. I'm going to make this video available to you. If you haven't done training in IEMT and you would like to do so, and I can see lots of people have already done this already, drop me a message. I've got some spaces in March. I don't know the dates. I think it's the 4th and 5th of March. I have 4 places left. And honestly, IEMT is just a fantastic way of working with people, and it goes much deeper than just trying to feel good about something. It finds the underlying structure, so the problem no longer has any kind of power. So please do put your comments here, what you thought about today. Has this been helpful to you? I know a lot of you will be at home making notes. Like I said, I will make this available to you as well. If you had enjoyed today, please do put likes. I don't know how you do that, to be perfectly honest, but please put hearts and thumbs. I know there's a slight delay in this, and you're not just avoiding me. I'm going to make this available on different platforms. If you have any questions about anything which I've covered today, I'm going to stay here for 10 minutes. So please do put any questions, comments. Has this been helpful? Has this made sort of understanding phobias and fears a bit more easier to kind of deal with? But please, I'm here. I'm going to stay here for 10 minutes. So please do ask any questions about anything that you want me to clarify or clear up that I've covered today. Okay, we have 10 minutes. Anybody? 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 One thing which I get quite a lot as well is people have a fear of exams or interviews. And the actual exam or the interviews is not the problem. It's about how their family are going to react to them, which is the problem, which I always find very interesting. So it's not just the fear, it's not just the problem of the actual exam itself. And them doing the exam is not the issue. Oh, really good, thank you, Steve. Yes, excellent. So again, I worked with this guy who was 16, and his mum got me, his parents got me to work with him. Oh, he's got an exam. He's got a phobia about exams. Can you hypnotize him to make him relax in the exams? So I was saying to him, what's the problem? My parents put far too much pressure on me. They always compare me to my sister. And basically I hate it. And then it makes me not be able to think. And when I underperform in my exams, they tell me that I'm useless. Hi, Matt. That's great information. Very helpful. A question, please. I have a client fear of germs contamination. How would you start with this? Exactly how I started at the beginning. So what's the problem? That's how I'd start. So I've got a fear of germs. So what's the problem? By having this fear of germs, what does it allow you to avoid doing? What does it allow you to avoid feeling? I've often had now this is just broad brushstrokes. When I've had a thing about germs and contamination, I've had that where it's gone back to abuse cases where they feel dirty inside and they've been sexually abused and they've had to go and had 10 showers and tried to scrape it, but they feel infected by something. Not always the case, it's just it has happened multiple times that I've worked with people. I have a client with agoraphobia, but I can only work via Skype. Have you worked with agoraphobia via Skype? I have worked with lots of people via Zoom. I obviously don't recommend it. Again, with agoraphobia is just, people haven't heard this about, they don't want to go outside. So basically I'd be like, well, what's the problem? And I would look at the lowest level where they can test it. Can they go outside into their back garden? Can they go into their front garden? At what point does this become a problem? And you want to break the thing down. I found that people with a feeling of agoraphobia is a fear of judgment of others. They don't want people to see them. They have some sort of body dysmorphia problem. They have some sort of fear against the world. I've worked with people who have been mugged and attacked near where they live, and now they have this feeling of being threatened and they don't want to go outside. And the more they stay inside, the harder it is for them to go out. So again, begin to break it down. Again, agoraphobia is a label. I'm interested in everything that's happening underneath that label. So they have agoraphobia. Cool, we've got a label. Okay. What's the problem? I can't go out. Okay, so? Well, I'm missing out on life. That's right. I just feel so frustrated. This feeling of frustration, how strong, how familiar. So are there any particular starting points to this? Any particular feelings, any particular emotions? What is it you'd like to do? How does it impact your life now? Identities, if they did get attacked, who was it by? What happened? Do you need to do the PTSD model around this? Agoraphobia is often a result of having some form of PTSD. So again, I just plug in the PTSD model there, and the agoraphobia may tend to sort of resolve itself, if that makes sense. Any other questions at all? Any other questions? Again, has this been helpful? Have you enjoyed it today? If you're watching this and you have a fear and phobia and you want to work with me, please just email me, matt@iemtacademy.com, matt@iemtacademy.com. And I've worked with all kinds of fears and phobias. And again, I'm not going to get you to love them. I want you to just basically, I want it to not bother your life. I don't want this fear and phobia to create a problem in your life now, and that's what I can really help you to achieve. Okay, just 2 more minutes. If you have any questions, please put them down now. Please put any questions you might have now. If not, I am going to make a move. I need to go get some food because I am hungry. If you're interested in learning more about IEMT, please email me. Good, Steve. I'm going to be doing lots of lives around IEMT and therapy and working with clients in the future. I'm going to be doing a lot more of them. If you have any particular things that you would like me to cover, please put them into the IEMT Academy group or onto the page, or drop me an email. Like I say, I hope this has been helpful to you. I've got to go now and build some funnels. Enjoy your life, and remember, be kind to each other, or not, whatever.